I am sick and tired of people saying that people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes cannot have any carbs, they can't have their comfort foods or any of their cultural foods. And I'm here to debunk that. My name is Patrick with the Diabetes Management Group. I'm a nutrition coach, a student physical therapist, and a 180 system provider. I've had prediabetes back in 2021 and was able to successfully reverse it in 2022. And I've helped thousands of clients learn how to lower their A1Cs while incorporating the foods that they love into their life. And today's topic is going to be how someone with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes can have burgers with their diabetes to keep their blood sugar steady. I'm not advocating for people to have burgers every single day. This is more of a once in a while treat that they can enjoy and tips to keep their blood sugars in ranges and preventing it from getting out of control or feeling ashamed or guilty or those other negative emotions. I felt that before. It's definitely not an easy time, and I'm here to share the learning lessons that I have without the scar and the pain. So let's get started. All right, everyone. So we're going to start off with a typical fast food restaurant item, then a higher class item, and then a homemade version one. For everyone who generally goes to a fast food place, you can always Google what their nutrition labels are and you just click on that. It'll have the different categories of what's on here. So let's go with burgers. Generally, what I like to see is what visually can I see is their carbohydrate to protein to fiber content is with that. So visually looking at this, I could tell that the Big Mac definitely would have a lot more carbohydrates due to the bread on the top, bread in the middle, and then bread at the bottom. And then they have pretty petite proteins on the side over there, and not to mention the sauces, which would have a higher content of the carbohydrates or sugars. And then if we look over here, it seems like there's a better ratio. There's a cheese, so that would be a form of fat and some protein, but it's very minuscule compared to what the patty would be over here. So if I had type 2 diabetes and was more conscientious of my health, I'd try and pick something that would be higher in protein so that I can feel fuller for longer because that's what protein is able to do with lesser amounts of carbs. So taking a visual look at here, let's just stick with the quarter pounder. So as we can tell, 520 calories. An important thing to note that not as many people are talking about, it's fat. So fat, yes, it does blunt the blood sugar spikes from higher glycemic index foods such as white bread or wheat bread or those sorts of items in this sandwich. However, it can come to bite us in the future through a process called gluconeogenesis, where the fats are then converted into glucose, which would increase our blood sugar levels. And that's something to be aware of, where hours later, whether it would be 4 hours to 6 hours to 8 hours, it really depends on the person. Just be cognizant that it can raise the blood sugars in the future if one isn't wary of managing it now and managing it appropriately now. And then the other thing, carbohydrates, about 42 grams right there. And then protein, 30 grams, which is a pretty good ratio in my perspective right here. So taking a look at this, there's only 2 grams of fiber, 30 grams of protein, and then 42 grams of carbs with 26 grams of fat on here. And taking a look at the ingredients that we could see over here, they have 2 of those buns, so that would increase blood sugars at a more rapid rate. And then, of course, if someone is wanting to add more ketchup to their burger, expect that there's going to be a lot more sugars in there too. Read the nutrition label, understand how much is going to be in there to be smart with them. The pickles are probably adding the fiber if they add any pickles, but if someone doesn't like any pickles, I presume that the fiber will go away because of that. And same thing with the onions. Onions provide the fiber, and if it's not in there and you pick them out, that's not going to have that in there. It's not going to be as great for those blood sugars later on. And of course, the protein, and then the cheese with the fats. So overall, with McDonald's, just guesstimating with what it would do, it would increase those blood sugars a bit more rapidly because we have faster acting carbs, not as many fibers. However, the protein does help with blunting a little bit. However, down the road, hours later, just be aware that it can spike a bit higher due to the higher fat content. So because of that, if I were to eat this McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese, from my perspective, that's not going to be enough to fill me up. So instead, I would want to pair it with a side. So we're going to leave here and just taking a look over here. You could also check how much a ketchup packet is, depending on how much you would put on there. Apple slices would generally be a better one for the nutrition information because you're having a item over here that generally has a little bit more fiber that can be paired with a side, and it tends to be a bit more satiating compared to the sides of potatoes. So if I take a look at French fries instead, so let's say we get medium size or small size, we can tell carbs are going to be significantly higher, not that much protein. And if we add that up, the carbohydrate to protein ratio from the burger that we would eat would be significantly higher, and it's not going to be as great. So generally, try to pair the burger by eating something that has more fiber on there. So those apple slices would be a better option. If they have any salads, make sure to try and use more of a vinaigrette. If they have anything else with more fats on there, like a fried chicken salad, know that the breading does have carbohydrates in there and be wary of it. And burgers typically would increase your blood sugar levels a lot higher. So now that we've got through that factor that if someone is going to eat the burger, but they aren't going to have that much fiber with it and their blood sugars are going to go higher, things that I would recommend it's whenever one picks up their food and their meal and they have time before they eat it, I would recommend going on a walk afterwards, a 15 to 20-minute walk. Heck, I would be bold enough to say that if you're in the drive-through and you just got your food, I would be crazy enough to just park on the parking lots and go on a 15 to 20-minute walk as I'm eating the food or after I'm done eating my sandwich so that I can keep those blood sugars more regulated. And it may take 15 to 20 minutes for some people. It may take a bit longer. It really depends on the person, but that's how I would approach it if I were to eat a burger from there. If they decide to take it home, other things that one could pair it with, you could have some celery with it. You could have some kale or a side salad with a vinaigrette because vinegar helps with dampening how high that blood sugar response would be and being able to slow down that digestion process so someone is able to eat the burger appropriately and whichever sides that they could put with it. Fries, I would say if you want to have them, just understand that you would need to put in more work by going on a longer walk in order to keep those blood sugars more steady. But also keep in mind, since these fries also have more fat that's going to be in there, then it's going to be important to go on a longer walk later on throughout the day in order to keep the muscles more insulin sensitive so that the muscles can gobble up those blood sugars as they rise throughout. So hopefully that's helpful for McDonald's. And of course, you could do the same thing too with any other factors as well. If someone is wanting a drink from McDonald's, try and get a diet soda where that has 0 grams of sugar on there. And it's helpful for addressing that sweet kick that someone would need. All right. And then let's see, what sauces do they have? Ranch, buffalo, honey, sweet and sour. Yeah, a good amount of these, they would have a good amount of sugar content. So just be careful of how much added sugars that you're putting in there and know that if you are going to have more sauces with it, that would mean a longer walk and trying to find other things to pair it with that has a better fiber ratio, whether that's whenever you go back home or when going to work, those factors and situations. All right, the next one that we're going to cover is going to be Shake Shack. So similar thing over here. Let's just go with the double Shake Shack burger. We have a high amount of sodium, so just be wary of that because higher amounts of sodium can lead to dehydration and causing the blood sugar levels to be a lot higher. A good analogy that I like to talk about with this is imagine you have a cup of water and you have 3 tablespoons of sugar that would get put into that water. So if you have that cup of water with 3 tablespoons of sugars, that would be representative of your blood sugar levels. And it's based more off of a ratio instead of the total number of it in that situation. But if you were to pour out half of that a cup of water, so you have half a cup, and you put 3 grams of the sugar in there, now the solution would be more concentrated, and higher levels of blood sugar is going to be read on a blood glucose meter because that concentration is higher. So just be aware, if you're going to have more sodium in a burger, regardless, it's going to be a lot higher in there. Drink a lot more water to counteract that higher amount of sodium. Be aware that you'll probably be going to the bathroom a lot more to pee it out in order to keep the concentrations better. All right, taking a look at this. The total fat, we have 48 grams of fat, so that's pretty high on there. Total amounts of carbohydrates, it's 27, and then protein is 51 grams. So overall, taking a look at this double stack burger, I have a feeling that this won't spike the blood sugars as high compared to the McDonald's quarter pounder burger, just because it has a higher amount of protein and the higher amounts of fat. However, just be cognizant that because of the higher amounts of sodium, and they generally use a potato starch bread, which is high in a glycemic index, that can cause it to rise a bit more quickly. So just be cognizant, drink more water, go on a walk, of course. And it's the same information where if you want to eat the burger, I would always recommend going on a 15 to 20-minute walk afterwards or a bit longer. And if you have the sides, try and find something that has a higher amounts of fiber, and that's a salad. And make sure to try and take out the sauces, the ranch dressings, or those other dressings that they use, because generally it also has higher amounts of sodium, which would increase blood sugars a lot more rapidly. And it's harder for it to come back down because becoming hydrated through that process, it takes a bit of time for that. So just being cognizant with that, if you're having the double stack burger, ideally try and go for, it won't spike blood sugars as much as long as you're hydrated, and make sure to go on a walk appropriately. So that one's that. And then the next one, I love Joshua Weissman, his humor, his recipes. It's amazing stuff. He debunks a lot of things. And if someone is wanting to learn how to become a chef, Joshua Weissman is definitely a good guy to combat it. So needless to say, we can look at his burger recipe. So let's do his, let's see. Yeah, as you can tell, he's made things better. Let's do his $2 homemade burger recipe. So looking at this process over here, the serving size, this is 4. So just know once you calculate the amount of carbohydrates on here, so let's say 2 tablespoons of the instant eats, I am going to calculate it right now, and I will be right back. All right, I just gave a general guesstimation calculation. I used ChatGPT by putting those values in here to guesstimate the nutrition information. I didn't put the fiber initially, but then I corrected it, put the fiber in there. So now if we take a look at this, the calories for the Joshua Weissman burger for each serving, it would be about 1,359 calories. Carbohydrates is 169 grams. Protein is about 71 grams. Fat is about 105 grams. And the fiber is estimated to be about 6 grams. And of course, it depends, because if you want his burgers, if you can't tell, like, his burger is pretty big. So try having half that amount instead. And of course, everything gets halved out. And based off the brioche buns that he's used in his video, that tends to be causing the blood sugars to spike a bit higher. And then, of course, sodium, that is going to be significantly less compared to other fast food restaurant ones. However, he does use a lot more fat. So just be cognizant that blood sugars can rise a bit more later on, hours later. Protein's a pretty decent amount, 71 grams. Fiber, estimating about 6 grams. So you're not getting that much fiber. So if you were to have that burger, I'd probably recommend cutting it in half so that you would have half the amount of carbs and, of course, protein, fat, and fiber, and pairing it with either a salad or pairing it with other foods that are higher in a fiber content or have a lower glycemic index value. But generally, pairing those two more to get more of that fiber content up would help significantly in blunting how high the blood sugar would spike if someone's wanting to have that burger. And additionally, going on that walk, I always highly recommend it. Go on walks 15 to 20 minutes afterwards, or depending on what is variable or reasonable, go for that. It's your body, it's your health. I'm just educating this as materials of what I would do if I had type 2 diabetes and I wanted to eat a burger, and how I would want to be smart about it too. And of course, insulin injections, be sure to talk with your care providers to figure out how much would be needed for that dosage. Honestly, it's a lot of math, but once you do the math and prep work ahead of time, it makes it significantly easier to have the blood sugars a lot more in ranges. And of course, increasing the amount of physical activity can help this a lot more significantly. Additionally, other things that I would recommend too, if you really want to be on top of this and enjoy that meal appropriately, trying to do a form of resistance training or more intense exercises ahead of time. And when I say high intensity exercises, this can include jumping jacks. This can include do 2 minutes, as many sit to stands as you can from the chair, doing something to increase that heart rate up. That'll actually increase the metabolic demand of those muscles. So that means it's more hungrier for those blood sugars, making it a lot easier for it to gobble up those blood sugars later on throughout the day, keeping it more insulin sensitive compared to usual, and allowing one to enjoy these burgers. So, moral of the story is if someone is wanting the burgers, make sure to understand the amount of grams that one would need for their insulin dosage. Higher protein, higher fiber. If that's not in the meal by itself, then find other forms for it too, whether that is a side or having a snack in the car if one is driving and they're having a fast food meal with it. Something where it's high in fiber, higher in protein, more lean in protein, of course, less in the carbohydrates, less in the fats to adjust for the intake of higher amounts of carbohydrates that's coming in and the higher amounts of fat that is coming in from these foods. Additionally, drink a lot more water to help dilute the sodium that's coming in to keep those blood sugars a lot more happier while going through this. And of course, get moving. Keep on doing some form of physical activity. I found that when I would eat some burgers and my blood sugar spiked up and I'm in a meeting and I can't do as much, even doing some fidgeting around, that helps significantly in doing something, whereas it's better than sitting around and not doing anything. Additionally, something else to do, it's fidgeting with my, like doing heel raises with my feet on the ground. So I just lift up my heels, place it back down, lift up my heels, place it back down, like this motion. On the chair, that's at least something that can blunt it if I'm in a crunch and I'm not able to walk appropriately or as accessibly. So if I'm in the car and I'm eating my burger, that's what I would do until I get out of the car in order for me to walk around and utilize my muscles to lower those blood sugars and make myself happier with that. So thank you all so much for tuning in for this. If you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate it if you could share it with a friend in need. I'm really trying hard to bust all the myths and misconceptions that are out there because, in my perspective, food is amazing. I'm a huge foodie, and I don't think people with type 2 diabetes should be limited by these fad diets or these other restrictions that are out there. Thank you, Zoom, for those balloons for agreeing with me. Instead, I want to show them how to enjoy the foods that they love while practicing the good habits of a 90-10 rule or an 80-20 rule, however sort of thing that works out, where 80 to 90% of the time you're sticking to the positive habits to make it so that the 10% of the time or 20% of the time having these meals and these comfort foods will be a good time. Those blood sugars are a lot more happier now. So thank you all so much. Please share this with somebody, like, subscribe, comment down below what your thoughts are, and let me know what food do you want me to cover next by putting in the comments below. Thank you all so much for tuning in.